So this Maimer, as you can see, is a star. The Maimer was said Tuesday, the 17th of Kyslev, h'tשמ Aleph, before Mincha. Most unusual, wasn't a Fabrengen. The Rebbe said a Maimer. And that's because it was a special occasion. It was published, the star, it was published Chanukah of that year. So it was Muga within days and published, edited. Now this, what's the story? Bekeshe, you can see the star, the Chagigas Sim Avachnosa Sefer Torah. This is in connection with the celebration of the Siyum, and then the Achnos of the Sefer Torah, which was written, as you can see, in honor of the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin for their 50th wedding anniversary, which is actually 2 years earlier, but I guess they started writing towards the end of the year and it was finally completed. They brought it to America. I'm pretty sure they brought it to America, yeah. And then on h'tשמ Kislev of that year, yeah, that's right. That's why the Rebbe said it. The 17th of Kislev, they got in a plane back to Yisrael. h'tשמ Kislev was a big Achnos Sefer Torah in the basement Nachum Shul in Kfar Chabad. So, bottom line, in honor of this special Sefer Torah, the Rebbe said this Maimer and was Magiah it. So let's begin. Yeah. Podoh בשלום נפשי מקרוב כי ברבים ה'ימודי. This was going, he says, h'tשמ Kislev, and the Sefer Torah is going to be brought into the base Menachem on h'tשמ Kislev. So it's h'tשמ Kislev Maimer, and the Maimer that the Rebbe said on h'tשמ Kislev that year is a hemshech to this one. That was not Muga, this one is, which is why we're learning this one. To stop, you may learn both, they're both short. Podoh בשלום נפשי מקרוב כי ברבים ה'ימודי. So, right, my soul was redeemed in peace for the battle that surrounded me, for the many were with me. וידועים דיוקי חק אדמו הזוקים בעל הגלות h'tשמ Kislev. It's known the shilas of the Alter Rebbe. The Baal Agula h'tשמ Kislev. P'noim malam mekayim b'chak admorem tzoi Baal Agula h'tשמ Kislev, and likewise the Maimorim of the Mittel Rebbe, whose Geula is h'tשמ Kislev. They point out that we have to understand that the Posuk doesn't underscores not just a general kind of Geula of redemption, Elo Shabdi B'Shalom Dafke. The diak is that it's Podoh B'Shalom, and we have to understand what that means. And what does he mean, Mikrov? Krov, Taka means a battle, but the usual term is Le Milchama. The more expected term will be Milchama and the like. I'm just thinking other terms as well, more common than Mikrov. Huh? Yeah, that's referring to the enemy. This is, yeah, you could say my enemy, redeem me from my enemies. Yeah. From the battle that surrounded me, Dafke, obviously. Shabdiya, he lead, the redemption is from me. That's self-understood. Why is that stated? Also have to understand the conclusion for the many with me. The inference is that this is the reason. Why is it that it's Podoh B'Shalom, this unique kind of Pediyah, is why? Because Barabim ha'yimadi, right? These are the Magnim Bazeh. What does this mean? So these are the common shilas of almost all the Maimorim. Although the Podoh B'Shalom we learned asked a unique question about Tefillah B'Tzibur Dafke. And the Nekuda is the Pediyah Shaykh L'Akashe Yesh Metziyah Shel Inyan HaMenagid. When do we speak of being redeemed? When there's a menagid, when there's an opposer. There's no existence of an opposing force. There's no need, there's no place for the idea of redemption. Kivin Shakdushi, now, Kivin Shakdushi, Aderech HaYechida, Vametzias HaYechida, because, in other words, when it's Kedusha, there's no need for, when Kedusha is present in the revealed, manifested form, there's no need for Pediyah, because Kedusha doesn't tolerate anything else, because it's the only truth. It's a Derech HaYechida, it's the only path, literally, and the Metzias HaYechida, the only reality. So when Kedusha is in its state of revelation, there's no need and no place for Pediyah. Aval kasha yesh tzad shekeneged, when there's not only the realities, it's not just Kedusha present, but there's the opposing force. Mitzias ha-choshech v'sichlos, and mitzias of darkness and folly. So then you need Pediyah, redemption from darkness and foolishness. Well, Pediyah zu, now this Pediyah, meviyah shakdusha tiyabay from the Yisrael and ha-choshech, the redemption results of the Kedusha itself becomes intensified, like the advantage of light. It's quoting the pasuk, and the virtue of Chachma from Sichlus. Then this is, as he says in Ha'orah 4, it's Loshen HaKosov, but it's not Mamash, the pasuk. The pasuk doesn't quite say that. The pasuk says, just to get clear, because Chassidus quotes this endlessly, the pasuk says that David HaMelech saw, that I saw the advantage of foolishness, Chachman of Sichlus, like the advantage of light over darkness. Chassidus says, number one, do you need this pasuk altogether to tell us that there is a maila of Chachma v'Sichlus, and moreover, he has to bring a mashal of Eir HaChoshech. So the Chassidus explains, we're starting with Tanya, that the David HaMelech is not saying that one is greater than the other. That's patently obvious. What he's saying is about the nature, the interplay between foolishness, Chachman, Sichlus, and Choshech HaNer. And that is that just like a little bit of light automatically dispels the darkness, so too a little bit of Chachma, meaning to say this Nekuda of conviction, the person has conviction, which is the point of Tanya, to develop this conviction, and then a lot of Choshech, Yetzer Hara, and Taivas burning, it's like a burning oven, quoting from the Navi, is quelled and dismissed naturally because of this inherent superior nature of Seichel of a Midas. Moreover, that's one beer. The second beer is, which is not the Pasha the Pshat, but he learns into it, that the Pasuk isn't just speaking about light being banished in the face, darkness being banished in the face of light, but he's anoyed min ha-choshech, that the choshech itself becomes oir. Yeah, so I saw that when you take Sichlus and you don't just banish it, but you transform it into Chachma, into Kedusha, that's a greater Kedusha, like transforming darkness into light, which naturally is not possible. The Gashmis. Yeah, thank you. But there's something else. But anyway, go. Yeah.
First of all, isn't there by definition always a rubis of Teiv, and like doesn't Kedusha, Teiv doesn't exist without a bit of Ra and vice versa? And secondly, what's the kivan since what?
He started saying that when there's no mitzias of a tzad keneged, you don't need pediyah. Now, why would there not be, in theory, I hear what you're asking, so it needs to be, I guess, addressed clearer. Why are we going to assume that there's no tzad keneged? Answer, because in theory, Kedusha is the derech yichida, metzias ha-yichida. And if not for Hashem's choice and tzimtzum and everything else, there wouldn't be tzad keneged. Avakasha yesh tzad keneged, which, why? He's assuming we know, because the Eibish's choice to make Yadira b'tachtim and have Yerida. So now we need to have Pediyah. But as things really are be'emes, there isn't the need for it. Yeah, so that's kind of implied, unspoken, but implied. This is not related. I'm just going to show you something you spoke about. Bashgacha Pratis yesterday to Michael Chernak's Mordechai David Shir. Somebody brought up a question that just, people ask, every teacher knows when you ask something and you answer, so the idea becomes clearer for you and crystallized. I'm just going to bring this in the Kudah here, in the context we just mentioned, how the Eibishter made it tzimtzum. And we're holding Erev Yitzchak Kislev. One of the paradoxes of Chassidus is, all truth comes in paradox. Then on the one hand, Chassidus came along and revealed the depth that is so astonishing. We mentioned this the other day, that there's resistance, tremendous resistance, in Torah, Malachim, Torah, hence Yitzchak Kislev, and so on. It's such a novel Chiddush. On the other hand, we all see that it's Davka al Chassidus that the most literal, literally, we understand the pasuk literally. So before Chassidus, when the pasuk says Hashem gets angry, or Hashem's Yeshiv Hashemayim Yitzchak, Hashem laughs, or he's happy, all the Mefarshim say he's just pretending to be, literally. In order that it motivates us. So Chassidus, we know that because of the whole Nisava and God's choice, Atzmos chose to become affected. No. He chose to, and once he chose, that's it. In an atzmistic way, he's affected, he's saddened, he's pained. Now another very meidic example of that, which without Chassidus, like it's relegated to just, it's all really a show. Starting with Nisava, they didn't know about such a medrash before Chassidus came along. And there were plenty of goyim with Baki in Kol HaTorah Kula Balpeh. I mean to say Torah Balpeh. They knew the medrash. Nisava Kodesh Baruch. What are you going to do with that? God desired. Again, it's all Loshen B'nai Adam. It's all just for. There's no Nisava. God desires. God's angry. God's upset. It's a pasuk. Aniyah violation. You see, God doesn't change, and obviously He cannot. He's infinite, the Creator. So all these things are God's projecting these attributes, but they're not really Him. And why does He project it? To motivate us for our benefit to get our Tzchan Gan Eden. That's the classic Pashit and Mefarshim answer. Rishonim. Even before the Rishonim. Goinim. So now after Chassidus, it's no Nisava, this is Pashit Kipshuter. Nisava? Now Derech said this is one of the most striking things that a child learns, has to encounter at the very beginning of Bereshis. That, it's people coming for them, yeah. Maybe you want to sit there, it'll be easier. Rosh Chodesh is a Korban Chatas is brought. Why is a Korban Chatas brought in Rosh Chodesh? Okay, he'll encounter this when he learns Parshas Pinchas. But a Korban Chatas is brought. Hashem says, "Bring for me." I think actually brings it also in Bereshis. Bring for me a korban to atone for me that I made the moon smaller. Atone for me. What does it mean? Chassidus Masbir. The Eivish this Parshit saying, I'm sorry. I know this is hurtful, golus and sin, but I'm responsible. Because of the tzimtzum, the miyatam hayareach, that's how this whole avakesh yesh sad shekeneged. Why is it sad shekeneged? Because the Eivish chose to make it sad shekeneged. And therefore there's averis, and therefore there's golus and punishment. Hashem says, please forgive me. I know you cannot understand it till Mashiach comes, and why I had to do it, you cannot. I apologize for the pain. There'll come a time when retroactively you'll thank me, but I know you can't relate to that tomorrow I'm going to thank you. The Rebbe could never say Hashem without his voice breaking. That will thank Hashem then for being angry for the Golus. You couldn't say it because he didn't suffer. Then we'll celebrate. And he's revealing it with chassidus deeper and deeper and deeper, and crying of every revelation that he's revealing. But Parshat Kipshut, the Eibusha says, please, I'm sorry, forgive me. In the deepest way. And it's another medrash be'emes. It's another medrash, very early, very early on in Gan Eden. It's a pasuk in Tilim, Noira Lilis al Bnei Adam, Hashem plots awesomely against man. Says the Medrash, Hashem plots against man. What does this mean? It's referring to Adam Arishim, which by extension is all of us. And what's the plot? After the whole Cheta Eitz Hadas, Adam turns to the Eibishter, says the Medrash, and says, you're blaming me for death? In your Torah, written before the world was created, there's all the dinim of Tum Tahara, Adam Kiyamas Ba'ayel. Forget all the history, just the Torah. And you blame me? The Eibishter's answer is silence. You're right. He's going to come back and say, no, I'm taking responsibility for this whole thing. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Every Rosh Chodesh, as you are renewed, as Klal Yisrael and Neshama Yisrael renewed, I ask forgiveness for the whole miyat that I diminished you, and therefore there's a golus, and there's a hell of a hester, and therefore there's going to be Avedis, and I already wrote in, there's going to be death, and there's going to be sin offerings and guilt offerings, and Abba Mrs. Bezdin. So it's Kipshuta, Mamish. Why is it Kipshuta, Mamish? Mitzad Atzmos is taken that way. Because of Chassidus is revealed Atzmos. And Mitzad Atzmos, there's no limits at all, and Eibishter can choose to become vulnerable and affected and have a taiva in this ave. Therefore, it's all emes. The paradox that Kipshuta. Okay. So let's continue. Just going to finish the paragraph, yeah? So it's through what? This pedia, this redemption from the Cheshach and Sichlus. The oil becomes greater. The Chachma becomes greater. Chachma meaning literally the Nekudis HaChachma, which is the first Gilui of Elikus. B'leirak Yisim Bekamos, and not just a quantitative increase. Elagam Yisim Beichos. I don't know what that means. Baruchni is here. The difference between a quantitative and qualitative. Gashivs understand there's more or there's a greater intensity. And we could also understand Baruchnius a little bit, but anyway, we'll leave it. Leave it for you to think about what Baruchnius means. Gilui more in Kamas and Gilui more in Eichos. I mean, more in Kamas means embraces. It would embrace more of Welt. More of the world will know this. I don't know. And Eichos is a higher level. Look at there. Think about it. Okay. So this pediyah can be in two ways. Pediyah ba'oifa and shel melchama. It can be you won, you redeemed, but it was a battle. Pediyah ba'oifa and shel shalom, or a peaceful. So the pasuk is explaining and revealing here. Shepediyah zuhi b'shalom. This pediyah David HaMelech speaks about was b'shalom. You don't need for a battle. Avshalom, who was his son, he was the rebel, acquiesces. Now this itself, now in this itself, whether the pediyah is through a battle or peaceful, actually there's two possibilities. Number one, if the pediyah is in such a way that the relationship, the engagement, is close with the one, amizbara v'hanifta, is close with the one that has to be refined and from which we have to be redeemed. He actually implies here that it's the one that we're battling one that has to be redeemed. He has nitzutz kedusha that have to be redeemed. That's really the... Avshadayin learn Yizbarav, and even though before the pediyah he hasn't been yet, but you're close to him. Or the nature of the peaceful redemption is you stand distant. So there's two ways. Is that which has to be redeemed close to you, at hand, or far? And here is mevai, that what kind of nitzutz kedusha? There's a nitzutz kedusha which is far, a nitzutz kedusha which is close. So here pediyah mikarovli, here the pediyah mikarov means from the battle it surrounds me, mikarov meloshin kirov, because it means like hand to hand. But pashtus is like it's a close battle. not using missiles, but direct engagement. So here the Podoh is mikrovli. Haine beoifen the bekirov in a way that's close. But I'm saying that Mitzvah elaborates on this Indian of the Nitzutzi Kedusha that are far and the Nitzutzi Kedusha that are close. Sorry, he's going to address this, I think, himself. He's just giving the outline and he elaborate. V'li, then the pasuk said li, which is superfluous. So that means it's p'tiyah b'toikev. It's an intense, forceful redemption. Shemokim l'shinoi that cannot be reversed, can't be changed. How is this reflected in that? The Gemara says, the Medrash says, the chol mokim shenemar li, whenever the pasuk Hashem invokes the word li, ein izaz lo'olam is not moved, doesn't budge forever. That's eternal. It brings several illustrations of that. Not only the Eibishter, even the David HaMelech and Tilim, he says the word li, as he does here, it means that this is a permanent state. There's a common psukim just escaped me now. Okay, Vatam, and he just goes through the pasuk. Vatam ha'p'tiyah kibarabim ha'yimodi. So why take is this p'tiyah b'sholem, and why is it li eternal? Kibarabim ha'yimodi. Shebezeh beis pirushim, and this itself are two pirushim. Aleph the kei al tefillah sarabim. It refers to the tefillah of the many, and beis the second one pirush the koi ala geula. It refers to the redemption. Because, in other words, because this is a collective redemption. That's why it's not just personal, but collective. That's why it's Ma'if Sholem and it's permanent. Shagul gam shel Rabbi. It's not just mine, but it's a collective redemption. Like the Fidik Rebbe writes about his redemption. Not only I was redeemed, but everyone who's referred to simply as a Yid. The tefillah was b'sholem and permanent because the Rabbi prayed for me. And our Maimah learned what's the dik b'Rabbim, it's Eser Keichas HaNefesh and the Shoyrish, Yechida, whatever. It doesn't go into the beer here. We'll just look at our order 9. So in the Maimah he quoted from the Fidik Rebbe's letter for the first year Beis Tammuz in Tavish Beches, 1928. And in order 9 he says, it's noteworthy that the same is really expressed by the Alter Rebbe himself after his Geula, who writes, this was not just, this imprisonment was not only leveled and all accusations against me, but it was an accusation on the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim, the whole Tnuas Achsidus. End of quote. So the Rabbi says, obviously his redemption wasn't merely personal, but was a redemption for the Rabbim, for the Baal Shem Tov and all Talmidei Baal Shem Tov and Klal Yisrael. It's not explicit, which is why it doesn't bring the pasuk. Who says it explicitly that the whole Geula is not personal, but Klal Yisrael, it's a Fidik Rebbe as well, which is why he brings it. Gimel. V'hinei Kol in Yonim Eila, all these things, Yeshtam B'avedis Adam, exist B'avedis Adam. K'mavua B'adrushim, as explained in the Maamar, if these in Yonim exist in Avodah, they exist of course in Torah. Because this is the Torah of a person, so whatever exists in a person is there first in Torah. And in light of the statement that Hashem looked into Torah, it's the blueprint, and with this He created the world, moving the other. On the contrary, it's not just, it's also in Torah. On the contrary, first they're in Torah. Then they exist in the person and in the world at large. So he's now going to explain all these inyanim as they are in Torah. First and foremost. beating in Podoh בשלום, Moishe b'Torah. So, in Torah itself, what is meant by a peaceful redemption? In Yiddu, the Torah of Hashemayim, Torah is not in heaven, not in the matter, but is dafke. Torah is given down here. So we need redemption. Since Torah is down here in this place of darkness and foolishness, this is the theme of Tanya lately, right? So there has to be, Torah itself has to be redeemed. Now, when Torah is redeemed from having been thrust or invested into Cheshech and Sichlus, in Torah itself, there's an aliyah in the Eira Torah, dafke, because of the darkness. Now, I think he's going to explain this. In light of that which is known, in the upper worlds, what's obvious and what is a given rather is elikos, and what's novel is existence, creation. But down here's the opposite. Is opposite of that. Legambri, absolutely. The given is I exist, is mitzias. And the novelty is, well, likus, no, I come from an Eibishter, there's a likus. So therefore, to reveal godliness, which is novel, that's already pedia. This world is in need of redemption, meaning that which is not concealed, trapped, not obvious, and has to be revealed. So the same way that is in Torah, that is in the world needs to be redeemed. So likewise Torah coming into this world of Cheshech and Sichlus needs to be redeemed. Now, what does this mean? There's different ways of this notion of redeeming the Torah. In other words, a Yid is not denying that there's a Torah. He learns Torah, but it requires redemption. The likus is concealed to some degree. So there's many kinds of redemptions that are required. In general, it's two, as indicated by our pasuk, not b'shalom and yes b'shalom. Just like within a person, there's two kinds of redemption. Now he tells us, what does it mean? This is from the Mittel Rebbe. Okay, test, but Mittel Rebbe 2. So this is a mechlal, the difference between Torah and Tefillah. Tefillah is mikrovli. Tefillah is a milchama with the nefesh habahamis. Tefillah is the time when we are to think about what's true, such that it affects our yeshus and our midas, as we learned in the previous Maimer, the two levels of merkava, to bring to bear the truth and therefore to soften the midas and to cause harmony. And then there's the higher avodah. That's all tefillah, right? Psuke de zimra means to prune. It means a song. It also means to prune. The whole avodah is to prune the thorns, to soften the ego, meditating on the Eibishter and creation and reality. So that's a P'diyah bil Milchama. P'diyah b'Shalom is Torah. Torah, you sit and learn, and Torah paskins that this is the reality. It creates the reality without direct engagement. That's P'diyah b'Shalom. So that's the difference, B'chlal, in general, very briefly, between the P'diyah of the Nitzutze Kedusha through Tefillah, which is engagement, and Torah, literally sitting in Beis Medrash and ruling, and the reality changes on the ground. The classic example, the most dramatic example Chassidus brings, is the Yerushalmi, B'negeya, the Psula. So the law of nature is that a child after the age of 3, the Psula, the virginity, Psula doesn't return. Before the age of 3 it will. So the case was, this happened to this child in Adar, the end of Adar, but then the Beis Din sat on the last day and decided to make a Ibiyar, to make it a leap year. So she hadn't turned 3 yet. Psula chayzrin. She naturally her psulas will return. They didn't even know about it. This terrible thing that happened, obviously. The paskin, boom, change happens on the ground in a most dramatic way. So that's where it is with it. That's between Torah and Tefillah. We'll stop here.